Well, folks, welcome back to another United in Stormwind review. We got some really interesting legendaries this time around. Some just absolutely crazy stuff. But we're going to start off here with one that's a little less crazy, still interesting. It's Anetheron, the big old demon that Kurtrus, the demon hunter, has been trying to fight and Tamsin's been trying to summon. He's a 6-mana 8/6 legendary for Warlock, and he costs 1 if your hand is full. So basically here, encouraging kind of a hand lock, super draw style of deck where you either life tap or backfire or whatever other card draw mechanism your way to a full hand, and then you get to cheat out a 1-mana 8/6. So kind of like in the old days, you tap, 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 play a Mountain Giants. Now you tap, tap, tap into Anetheron, and he's pretty big. I do think that 6 health here was pretty deliberate, or maybe like a balance change Blizzard made. Maybe he felt too good as an 8/8, just too hard to remove. That surprises me, given venomous scorpids existing and all the rush minions in the world existing these days. I gotta say, 6 health doesn't feel especially sturdy to me. Even if you play this guy like on turn 3 or 4 or something, 6 health is gonna go away fairly easily a lot of the time in these metas. Just a piercing shot, a venomous scorpion, a rush minion or 2, just a couple 3/2s on board, right? Like, I'm not sure he's really that swingy, in other words, is what I'm getting at. Because you're probably going to be spending a lot of your mana to life tap or play card draw cards to get to a point where playing this early enough is compelling. Because the later in the game you get this down, you take a while, you're playing other stuff, removal, healing cards, you don't get to 10 cards until the mid game. I think this is far less interesting. We were going to talk about another hand lock support card here as well. So maybe there's sort of a critical mass where you play enough of this stuff that it makes sense. It also might just sort of be, speed bumps on the way to something like a Tamsin questline reward, where you're just playing towards fatigue and then using fatigue to kill your opponent via Blightborn Tamsin, or maybe towards a Niru reward where you just want to draw a ton to empty your deck to get to Niru. So there are a couple win conditions this plays towards. So maybe it's not just in and of itself that it's interesting. Maybe it just creates enough of a problem for your opponent that slows them down a little to get to those other things. But my thought is it still takes a while to get to those big payoffs and big rewards. So you might need more stabilization, more removal, and as opposed to cards like this, which are a little bit more pressure based, because even if your opponent doesn't really sink everything into this, the 8/6, is it going to be forced to trade into 3/3s and stuff? Are you going to be able to go face and create this sort of counter pressure? It feels like it's going to be kind of awkward there, where there's this mix of healing and survivability and removal required, where I don't know how a card like this exactly slots into the picture. So it feels like it's going to need this perfectly tuned meta or deck list to make this worth it in many ways. So, if this were slightly bigger or required a little bit less, it feels like it would just get that little bit faster and a little bit more impactful. As it stands, I'm a little worried this one's just going to be awkward. I don't know if it's going to make enough swing at only 6 health. That's a very intriguing number to choose here, even for a 1-mana card. And it might sound crazy to say like, oh my god, a 1-mana 8/6 not that powerful, but Demon Hunter has the 1-mana 6/6 rush demon that's, I would say, arguably as easy to activate. Doesn't even get played. It's not even played, which is kind of crazy to think about, by the way. How's that card not getting played? So this is a legendary as well, so you're not even that likely to have it in hand early in the game, and it's going to make that most of an impact because you can't get 2 of these in your deck. So I think there's a few things really keeping this in check, where it just doesn't feel like it's all that powerful to me. On that note, we've got another hand lock kind of support card here, the Dark Alley Pact, a new 4-mana spell that summons a fiend with stats equal to your hand size. And a lot of the things I just described about the last card, I think really apply to this one as well. And this one's 4 mana. So like, yes, on occasion, you're going to get a 4-mana 8/8, 9/9, 7/7. Even on curve on 4 mana turns, I don't really think you're going to get a big enough minion here that it's that exciting or intimidating. I mean, 4 years ago, yes, 4 mana 7/7s and 8/8s were pretty amazing. But again, venomous scorpions, rush minions, just insanely efficient removal. All these things exist in Hearthstone today. I don't think a big dump of stats is as relevant as it used to be. There's just a lot of ways to just ignore these sorts of things and just race people down because the 8/8's trading into 3/3s on the backswing, or just remove it super duper efficiently with some kind of rush minion or, you know, combination thereof or cheap removal spell, whatever it is, right? It's just, is it going to make a big enough impact even if it survives on board? I don't know that just efficient stats are good enough anymore. Not to mention all the checks on this, where if you draw it in the late game, it's really weak. If your hand's not full, if you're playing this, you're not playing survivability tools. You're playing a bunch of card draw tools to make this good, and then that puts you really far behind, and this isn't quite swingy enough because it doesn't have taunt or rush or reactivity. So, you know, I love Handlock. I thought Handlock was one of my all-time favorite decks to play. The kind of managing your health total reward side of things was so much fun. I don't know if this brings that back. I don't know if that style of deck can survive in Hearthstone these days. I think Warlock as the ultimate like removal deck, as opposed to the I'm going to develop counter pressure big dude deck, makes more sense. The removal side of things as opposed to the counter pressure side of things. So it's going to take a real critical mass of these sorts of cards to get them over the hump. And I just don't see that happening anytime soon at all, just the way Hearthstone shapes up these days. Alrighty, so next up here we have Bolner Hammerbeak, a pretty crazy shaman legendary. He's 2 mana, he's a 1/4, and he reads, after you play a battlecry minion, repeat the first battlecry you played this turn. So I have seen a little bit of confusion around this card text, so let's break it down just to be sure we know what this one means. So essentially here, you play this guy, set him up, then you play a battle cry, any battle cry card you want. That sets the battle cry that's being triggered for Bolner. And then you can play any other battle cry. It's going to have its normal battle cry effect go off. And then it's also, as a bonus, going to repeat that very first battle cry that you set. So you can play one battle cry to set it and then play 5 pin flingers, and all the pin flingers are also going to activate that first battle cry. So the idea here is to, you know, put your best, coolest, most advantageous battle cry effect first, and then you can spend any amount of cheap mana on other stuff like pinflingers to reactivate that battle cry. And there's some pretty crazy possibilities here, because a couple things. Number one, the first minion does trigger Bolner itself. We've seen this in the reveal video. So for instance, in that video, they had 10 mana, they played Bolner, they played a Primal Dungeoneer. The Primal Dungeoneer did not just draw 2 cards like normally, it drew 4 cards because its battle cry went off and it was the first battle cry, and Bolner is an after effect. So after that battle cry was played, it triggered the first battle cry, which is the Primal Dungeoneer. That Primal Dungeoneer drew a battle cry elemental. They played that, it drew 2 more cards. You could keep that chain going if your elementals are cheap enough. So basically, he's kind of, you know, just crazy card draw engine in a can if you want to play him that way. But the crazier thing that people have been toying around with already, there's a lot of people who have theorized some OTKs with this one. There are a handful of different ones that exist. I think the most likely one is to at any point in a game play a corrupted dunk tank and a corrupted circus medic, the card that deals 4 damage on its battle cry, and then drop Bolner into Lightning Bloom into Yasharaj, thereby setting Yasharaj as your battle cry. Yasharaj is going to give you a 0 mana circus medic and a 0 mana dunk tank, which you can use to send 8 damage face. And every time you play that circus medic, you're going to get another batch of 0 mana corrupt cards. And in fact, this time you'll get 4 total because you've now got extra ones in the pool. So there you can send another 16 damage face. Each time you play one of those circus medics, you're going to get another batch as well, basically generating this crazy loop of burst damage in hand, and really only demanding 3 cards, Bolner, Lightning Bloom, and Yasharaj on the given turn with a little bit of setup as well, which could be a great finisher for a slower kind of OTK shaman deck. It's not even that absurd at all. And, you know, there's just a lot of other ways to use this card. So I think it's actually decent just tempoing this on turn 2 sometimes and just playing like a good turn 3 battle cry. Like, play this on 2. It's got 4 health. Might be kind of hard to kill. We've seen that sometimes with Octobot and Rogue, where it's just like, man, that 4 health is a nightmare depending on the matchup. Tempoed on 2, followed up on turn 3 with like that Primal Dungeoneer we talked about, and draw 4 cards. Play a Fireheart and get a couple generated resources out of it. Whatever other battle cries that show up, Bolner could really help enable those. Not to mention some mid-game turns, just you got 5-6 mana, play this alongside 1 or 2 other cards, and you've got some big plays outside of even like the crazy OTKs. So really, at any stage of the game, various kinds of decks, this card seems to have some rather absurd potential, I think. All right, so now let's move on over to Jace Darkweaver here for Demon Hunter. Pretty crazy finisher card, I think. He's an 8 mana 7/5 with Battlecry. Cast all fell spells you've played this game and target enemies if possible. So this is a, kind of a Shudderwalk or a Test Greymane sort of card that's just replaying a bunch of stuff. And in this case, it's fell spells. If you look at this fell spell pool in Standard right now, it's not great. There's not a lot of awesome things. There's some cool like AoE cards like Chaos Novas or something if you wanted to play this in a defensive way. But I think the most interesting angle for fell spells are 2 Furies and 2 Chaos Strikes. There's a lot of stuff that just gives a ton of attack to your hero. The Chaos Strikes also draw you a couple cards. So basically, if you played Jace, post 10 mana, I guess, you're going to have 2 4-attack Furies and 2 2-attack Chaos Strikes for a total of 12 attack off of your Jace Darkweaver, which kind of makes him like better than an Illidari Inquisitor at going face if there's no taunt in the way. He'll also draw you 2 additional cards, maybe get some other value like a Metamorphosis where you could squeeze in an extra 4 off of a bonus Metamorphosis hero power. And then whatever other fell spells we haven't seen yet are possible as well. So I actually see this as like a way to just do a ton of burst damage. It's just like spend 8, deal 12 plus, reload your hand. Just seems like a great mid to late game tool. And we've got Demon Hunter decks already playing to this mana range already. So as long as they're squeezing in a few awesome fell spells like Chaos Strikes and Furies, Jace could be nuts. Now, of course, you have to have played all those things. So if you didn't hit your Furies or stuff stuck in deck or whatever, and you need to play this, might not be quite as powerful. There are some risks and downsides there if the density of fell spells in your deck isn't especially high. But, Demon Hunter's great at drawing cards already anyway. I think they'll be able to draw enough to make this thing consistent and powerful. And, we're still pretty early in a given expansion rotation. So, we're going to get more fell spells this expansion, presumably revealed, and then a bunch more maybe next set too. So between all the mini sets and next expansion, there's going to be a lot of stuff to work with this for this card. So I think Jace will probably end up being pretty powerful late game tool and often just a game ender thanks to damage alone. So next up here is the Two-Faced Investor, an ogre card. We love ogres. 3 mana 2/4. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of a card in your hand by 1. But there's a 50% chance to increase the cost. And saw some confusion about the wording on this one. Some people think that means a 50% chance to increase the decrease. In other words, like it would reduce the cost by 2. But I guess we've seen some footage of this card, and it seems, no, it's going to increase the cost of a card in your hand by 1, which certainly better fits the artwork and the ogre theme of things going against you. So, this is not a good card, I don't think, at all. A cost reduction of 1 is pretty measly, right? We've got like Efficient Octobot out there doing, an entire hand. It's a pretty good card. At 2 mana, it's a 1/4. Sometimes, you have to activate it. You got to put in a little more work. This is passive, but this also can backfire half the time and ruin a curve for you. And the upside's just not that great. Like reducing the cost of a card by 1 is not great. Well, you spent 3 mana on a 2/4, an unexciting 2/4, an understated minion here. So this just feels like utter pack filler, like meme territory. I just can't see a reason to ever play a card like this. The stats aren't there. The effect is far too risky for the reward, which isn't even really that good in the first place. So Two-Faced Investor looks pretty bad. All right, so next up here is the Counterfeit Dagger, a new 4 mana 4/2 weapon for Rogue. Battlecry gain a random friendly death rattle that triggered this game. So 4/2 weapons have been decent in Hearthstone. I don't think we've seen a lot of these lately, but still, that's a lot of damage for a weapon to pump out. 8 damage there. Also some death rattle synergies. Now this is kind of weird because the death rattle this gains is based on a battle cry, so you have to have already seen that death rattle trigger earlier in the game. So you can't like play this and then play a better death rattle minion and then let that death rattle minion die, because this is gaining the death rattle on battle cry. So if you're playing this on curve, where it's probably going to be best as a weapon, you've played either a 1, 2, or 3 drop death rattle. And if you look at the pool right now, there's really not that many exciting ones. There's like devouring ectoplasm to give you a 2/2 adventurer, and like the Quillbore heal guy, whose name I can never remember, by the way. What the heck is the name of that card? I gotta look it up real quick. It's gonna drive me crazy if I don't. What the heck is the name of this card? Death's Head Cultist is the name of the card. I've literally played this card 1,000 times and don't know its name. So, you know, you could get like a little bit of heal, you get a minion. I think there could be like some kind of Leopardome style card as well. You play it to get some extra damage out of this. All those are possibilities. But if you're playing this on curve, you know, it's only going to be a death rattle for a 3 mana or less minion, which just isn't ever going to be that nuts because, you know, it's a 3 mana or less minion, like the Ruby Knight. You get a 4/4. Okay. So the upside here on the death rattle synergy, I think, is fairly limited if you're playing this when you want. Now, of course, you know, you can play this on turn 8 after having played, you know, some other giant death rattle earlier in the game, or you played a plague proto-drake and you play this on turn 9. Sure, those are all possibilities, and then this weapon packs a lot more punch, but I don't know if Rogue's building a deck that looks like that. We don't have a lot of death rattle synergy stuff available right now. That's a really late game driven thing for what Rogue is traditionally good at, and even then the death rattle on this is a bit delayed because you have to attack with it twice, or you have to use your weapon hero power to override it, which probably doesn't feel good because then you're losing half the value on your weapon. And sure, you get a cool death rattle, but at what cost? So all in all, it just seems like this is lining up rather awkwardly. There's not a lot of great plays for it at the moment. It doesn't fit super well. This card has some major challenges to overcome. Moving on to the Lightbringer's Hammer here, a 3 mana 3/2 weapon for Paladin with lifesteal and can't attack heroes. So yeah, it's a board control weapon at the purest level here. Help you keep up with some early game minions, kill off a couple 3/3s, and hopefully, you know, save some life in the meantime, thanks to this lifesteal. And this card feels totally fair. It feels completely fine. It's got some upside over other weapons like it. It's got a downside that it can't attack heroes. I don't think that downside's necessary, to be frank. If you look at like Aldraki Warblades and Demon Hunter, this only has 1 extra attack over Aldraki. And Demon Hunter's got, you know, a million ways to buff their attack, like hero power alone, right? But a million other just super cheap, efficient attack buffs, which makes Aldraki really powerful because they can, you know, put it up to 6, 8 attack or something and heal a ton. Paladin doesn't really have that upside on this weapon. They can't push it as far. So I don't know why the can't attack heroes aspect is here. I don't think it needed it. I think it would have felt fair still as a 3 mana 3/2 in Paladin, even if it was, you know, technically better than Aldraki Warblades at a base level, because a Paladin doesn't have the upside, and it still would have had its own natural limits because there's just not many ways for Paladin to gain extra attack. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's flavorful for some reason or another. You know, it's interesting at least, but is it necessary? Is it really going to hold this card back? Because like I said, it feels fair, and fair cards don't do well in Hearthstone these days. We need cards that really feel like they've got a lot of power packed into them. So I think this one will end up just not being worth it most of the time. Regardless if it's a comparison to Demon Hunter, I just don't think it stands out enough. I think there are better Paladin weapons available, better healing tools available for Paladin, so this really won't make enough of a mark to make it into a list. Anetheron is a 2-star card. Dark Alley Pact is a 2-star card. Bolner Hammerbeak is a 5-star card. Jace Darkweaver is a 4-star card. Two-Faced Investor is a 1-star card. Counterfeit Dagger is a 2-star card. Lightbringer's Hammer is a 2-star card. Yeah, that's right, folks. I did it. I gave these guys 2 stars. Look, I'm not happy about it. I want Handlock to be good. I can't see it coming together. I think there's a chance the Niru and Blightborn Tamsin stuff could get there, Blightborn Tamsin in particular. But I don't know if those cards are going to be the ones that help you do it. I think it's going to be more about survivability and stretching a game out. I don't think these fit that game plan. I don't think a deck that's all about summoning big dudes early fits a game plan particularly well either. So I'm just not seeing the future for these. If you disagree, of course, share those thoughts in the comments below. Always happy to hear your take. I get some wrong every once in a while. Every once in a blue moon, I get a card wrong. So thanks much for watching. As always, stay tuned for more card reviews. And until next time, game on.